As some of you may have already seen, of course, one of the most iconic classic performance cars and certainly classic rally cars from the UK scene is making a return, but not as a restomod, not as an electric conversion as so many are these days, although it kind of looks like it should have an electric power plant given the looks of it with the LED lights. But this is of course a continuation, not a recreation, of the iconic Mk1 Escort. And although it's not being built by Ford, it is Ford approved, down to even using their name and the Escort name on the car as well. Now these 150 cars are being built by a Coventry-based Boreham Motorworks. In addition to making 150 of these, it certainly isn't coming cheap, so it may as well have a supercar engine at this point because it's going to cost a hair under £300,000. What I find interesting is at that price point there are two different engine choices, so I'm curious what kind of actual price difference it makes depending on which one you choose. They're not taking old Escorts and restomodding them into a modern car. These actually have new chassis numbers, and they're actually based on the bodies of those actual Escorts from back in the day. So this is literally a continuation of the Escort line, it's just jumped multiple decades into the modern era. Now of course they have made some changes. As you can tell, it has wider arches, they've improved the bracing on the car as well to make it better through corners, they've changed the rear suspension, in particular the dampers are now vertical, they've redesigned the rear axle to use a combination of aluminium and titanium to make it stronger and of course more up to modern performance standards. It comes equipped with a limited slip diff and coilovers as well, and where things get interesting is the two different engines. You can choose one which is more authentic, you could say, to its roots, which is a twin cam, now though in of course fuel injected form rather than carburettor from back in the day. It's enlarged to about 1850cc, so in other words a 1.8 litre with 182 horsepower. Again, 300 grand for a 180 horsepower car, and that also comes with a 4-speed manual, straight cut gears, short ratios, very rally style, so it'll have that nice rally whine to it because of the straight cut gears, and of course both of these engine options are sending power through the rear wheels as with the original cars. The other option, which is what most journalists and outlets are talking about, is the modern engine choice. A modern 2.1 litre 4-cylinder built up to 10,000 RPM capabilities, forged rods, billet crank with a dogleg gearbox, a 5-speed instead, more of a mid-range ratio selection, so it's got a bit of a combination of rally and track with, instead of 182 horsepower, 296. 300 horsepower for 300 grand is still kind of crazy, but at least that's a bit more comparable to something like, I don't know, a Singer Porsche 911 maybe, one of those classic recreations. It's still insane to charge that much for a car like this, such is the market I guess at the moment. And for the classic aficionados when it comes to driving style, well, they've made some changes as I already mentioned, but they are keeping it old school because it has no ABS, no power steering, no traction control, and of course visually the most notable changes in addition to being wider are the chrome delete from the front and back end, and of course those new designed LED lights. And when it comes to the interior, it has a lot of that original kind of style, even the seats have that retro kind of vibe, but with more modern materials, of course the updated dash, and it's got Apple CarPlay for example, small details like that, but keeping the overall vibe. It's kind of this trend which you could say kind of became mainstream, quote unquote, around the time of the Eagle E-Type Jag, which kind of reinvented that idea of a classic, but with modern advantages. And of course every single one of these cars that comes out is a vehicle which at least on paper should please me because it's the kind of stuff I've been asking for years and couldn't really understand why more manufacturers weren't doing it. Old car in terms of style, but modern tech underneath. I'm really happy that it's occurring so often these days it seems. The downside though is that it always seems to be this supercar tier pricing that comes along with it. And that is not what I was talking about. I was talking about actual production cars built en masse to keep the pricing down. So for example, if you imagine, I don't know, like a modern Ford Estate or a station wagon as you'd call it in the States, but then just design it to be as close to something like a classic 60s Ford Country Squire as you realistically could. So replace the chrome bumpers with plastic, make the bodywork more crumpleable for modern pedestrian safety. Of course you have a stronger frame now, so the impact tests will be far better. Thicker A and B pillars for, again, roof safety. You can update certain things, and certain things of course you have to, height of headlights, all that kind of stuff. You can do a lot with car design while keeping it a classic look, and this is a prime example of that. This is not a one-off concept car kind of machine. They're making 150 of them and they're road legal, so clearly it can be done if you put the effort in. It's just that when you do it on a relatively low production scale, and even more so if you outsource it to a company like Eagle or here with Boreham, of course the price is going to be high because of the amount of work that goes into it and how limited the volume of production is. Where things do get really spicy though, particularly when it comes to Boreham, is that this isn't the only thing they're doing. They're also planning to do a recreation of the RS200, and that could be very, very special. Probably more like a 500 or 600 grand car car, if not more, I would imagine, but that one is actually one which I'm really keen to see what that could do, particularly if they improve the power over what was already a ridiculously fast car, if you could ever find one on the road to begin with, and of course quite a notorious car in Group B Rally. And of course later on today I'll be featuring another news piece about another returning rally icon, although for some people probably not quite as good in terms of the news of how it's coming back, but certainly at least on paper a 500 horsepower Group B era return sounds like a pretty cool thing. So we'll talk about that one later on, stick around for that, and of course for now, thanks for watching.